Welcome back, faithful listeners, and on this episode of Tripod, I am joined by Roman Gonzalez of Gardenio. It's a really cool garden club startup from Austin, Texas, but I'll let him tell you all about what they do. I, however, will tell you that if after listening to this interview, you're interested in being a Gardenio Garden Club member, you can get 15% off your order by using promo code TRIPOD at checkout at growgardenio.com. I'm a customer. I really love how easy it is. Especially because I do not have a green thumb at all. They send you everything you need along with detailed instructions. Plus they have this really cool infinite lives policy that will replace your plant for free if it dies or if you kill it. Oops. Again, 15% off your order. Use promo code TRIPOD at checkout at growgardenio.com. I brought Roman on the show because I wanted to share his startup story with you. You're going to hear his take on the most challenging aspect to building a startup and the tips and recommendations he has. You're also going to hear about his searching for a co-founder. Roman's going to talk all about that process and what worked and what didn't work for him. We're also going to talk about Gardenio's current marketing efforts, what's working, what's not, and more importantly, what you can learn from their strategies.
You're listening to Tripod, the Tricycle Creative podcast, produced for anyone interested in being a better digital and content marketer. Host Ross Erosion is a marketing coach, content creator, and entrepreneur who brings you helpful tips, social media updates, inspiring interviews, and his own unique perspective on how to tell your story and grow your business. So sit back, relax, and let's get pedaling.
Hey, Roman, thank you so much for joining me today on Tripod, the Tricycle Creative podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm stoked, man. I'm happy to say this is, I guess, like many of my guests. I'm not only a host for the show, but I'm also a client of what you do, and we're going to get into a lot of what you do. So let's start in 3 sentences or less. Introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. My name's Roman Gonzalez. I'm the founder and CEO of Gardenio. I'm intensely passionate about exploring in the world what makes a meaningful, happy, fulfilling life. And one of the ways that that's manifested is through the company that I have now, Gardenio, and we're a new kind of direct-to-consumer garden club membership that sends you everything you need to grow your own food at home, smaller outdoor spaces, with an app to help you as you grow.
So as a content marketer myself, I also like to kind of position myself into I'm a storyteller. So in that vein, talk to me a little bit. What's the story of Gardenio? Because you guys are, maybe to really be way on the nose on this, you're kind of in a little seedling state, but you're growing for sure. But how did you guys get started? What led to you, starting this company? Fire away. What's your story?
Yeah, absolutely. A kind of brief version of it is it kind of all started with a little bit of what I talked about in the beginning there, which is my passion for exploring the world and figuring out what makes it meaningful. How can we find happiness? How can we find meaning and value? Right. I was a philosophy kid in high school, and then in college, that's what I studied at Brown. And I was always interested in those things, and not just those topics, but how do you take a really difficult subject matter and make it easy to understand? And at the time, it was philosophy. I wanted to be a professor. And so over my career, that was always in the back of my mind, kind of the through line. Spent about 6 years in marketing and media production, marketing director of a startup, acquired by Salesforce, went on to user experience design, where I've been the past 7 years. And so basically, as I had this interest in, what makes a meaningful, happy life, kind of went through a lot of my 20s trying to figure that out, as we're all doing, as we all perpetually do. And at a certain point, I got interested in cooking, right? And I was like, I want to get really good at this. And I'd kind of gotten tired of philosophy a little bit. And as I started to get into cooking, I was like, oh man, well, how do you make a good, I don't know, a salsa or something? It's like, okay, well, there's good tomatoes, right? And there's certain kinds of tomatoes. And now you start to look into it. There's all these varieties within tomatoes. And I was like, well, how do you make a good tomato? You read all these articles and they're like, it's the ingredients that really speak for themselves. So then that was like the first time that I started really thinking about the ground and how so much of what we consume and use in the world comes from it. And in that, I found this huge new world of information, of aesthetic, of everything, and it became this really new, rejuvenating space for me. It's kind of like my new philosophy is the way that I talk about it. And it's just kind of this endless world of knowledge. And so then I was like, oh man, that'd be really cool to grow my own food. Oh, but that's something that like retired people do or something like that. It's I was like, oh, when I retire, yeah, they have like the straw hats, they have like the flowery button ups, and I was like, oh, that's not
what
really.
I'm wearing right now. So
Yeah.
but I am old, to be fair. So it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
No, I have since donned a bonnet. So,
we really have a good matching combo for an audio only podcast.
but yeah, I started. I was kind of like, okay, that's something maybe I'll do later, right? It's not really like for me. And then one day, a friend just like dragged me to this plant sale, and I bought like 13 plants.
When you say plant sale,
yeah,
you don't mean drug deal. Just to be fair, you mean legit, not a drug deal. Just to be clear.
That's correct. I may use
fantastic.
I may use plant sale in that way later in the conversation.
For sure.
It's
fair enough. Okay.
But so we went to a plant sale, super legal, and which is how you know it's legal.
Sure.
And I bought like 13 plants, and I came home, and like a month later, like all of them except for one were dead. And I remember thinking just like, wow, that's like, and it's because I just made all these first time mistakes, and so I even like called like 30 different garden centers and was sort of like, how would you get started? How would you get started? And I would go in, they'd give me these like Word docs, and all the sites online were just old. There were these videos of like 30-minute one cut of some dude in his backyard and just being like, this is how you grow a carrot. And it's like, and I was like, this is so weird. Like for something we've done for 20,000 years, it's weirdly difficult to grow your own food. And that's kind of where like the genesis of, that was like the genesis of Gardenio, my own personal experience, but it sort of folded into all of these other things that I thought were really meaningful. The political element of growing your own food, the way that it brings communities together. It's good for us physically and mentally. And I was like, wow, this is this opportunity to work in a space and like make some change with my unique background to actually like bring some good into the world in a very fundamental way. So that's kind of how it.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because I feel like, talking to your philosophy background, right? I almost feel like those things are this similar, right? Like with the philosophy background, looking to kind of, understand, I think that the very, I would say complex, age-old, lifelong questions of the world, but potentially also to bring some good into the experience. Almost, I would say also like I'm sure even the fundamental question of what is good versus what is evil, which is definitely not a subject for this podcast. I don't know, but I feel like this is very interesting when you talk about this philosophy experience that you started with, and then moved, if you will, into the marketing role and things like that. But yeah. I think philosophy majors have to be curious minds.
Yeah.
And I think that good entrepreneurs are curious and they seek out answers. And I feel like good philosophers are probably the same.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I think a lot of it has to do with, when you're a philosophy major, and I did a lot of journalism over that time too, that like you just learn how to ask the right questions and good questions. And that's what you do here, totally. Right? Like, and if you can ask the right questions, you'll you may not find ultimate truths, but you'll find stuff that's true enough that'll take you much further than if you just weren't asking at all.
You mentioned ingredients being important kind of the thing that led you down this path. And
Mhm.
that feels like it applies also to building a business, right?
Totally.
The ingredients, the I mean, on all different levels, the marketing that you have, the people, I would
Mhm.
say probably the most important ingredient, the people that you have, the customers, the customers that you interact with, the ones that you get to, sign up for your service, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So with those ingredients in mind, what's been kind of the most challenging ingredient in building your startup?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, obviously, at different points, it's been different things. Like in the first kind of epoch of Gardenio, first like year and a half, team was really the most challenging thing. That um, if not for the team I have now, and we've been able to recruit, and we've had so many people volunteer, I would just still be kind of a crazy dude on the side of the street yelling about plants, right? Um,
Totally legal plants. Wink,
totally
wink.
legal. and and so and I just spent so much time, trying to find stuff like technical co-founder and people to help with operations, and we're lucky enough to work in a space where so many people are passionate, not just about gardening, but about food and sustainability. And in our case, we work very hard to build a very diverse startup, and that's a big part of like how we do things. And so many people just want to be part of a startup that's built a different way than they're used to seeing. And so we've had so over 60 people volunteer their time with short term or long term, professionals, certainly new folks, interns, and things like that. People switching careers, and so it ended up becoming. I mean, now we actually have so many, and this is actually true. We have so many people that reach out saying like, "Hey, I just want to help," that we actually can't manage the inbound flow,
What a
which is
great problem to have.
it is, and so it's a little unfortunate, but I think it's on the whole it's very fortunate because we seem to have tapped into something with not just what we're doing but the way we're doing it. And so now the issue is, we're still like, we're very early on. We don't have any big budget or anything like that, and we want to be able to pay these people and to stick around, and so that gets into sort of the second epoch of capital. Once we really refined our product. We just launched the memberships this year. There were previous versions of the product before. Happy to have you as a Gardenio member,
You're
and
welcome.
and it's been really navigating the fundraising scene, and what are the right targets. What's everybody has an opinion on every part of it. What kinds of things do we say and don't say that changes depending on the environment, and some people have really high expectations for low check amounts, and that was something that even though we'd gone through a couple of accelerators, we didn't have like a ton of training in. So it's been
Mhm.
a lot of figuring that out. Now I feel very good and very competent in it, and we're just in kind of the outreach phase, and that is a slog for anybody. So
So you mentioned the search for a co-founder. I'm very intrigued. I
mhm,
am a singular at this point founder of my business, but it intrigues me. I'm always interested in other entrepreneurs paths and growths, and I don't know, like as much as a task person, goal oriented person as I am,
mhm,
getting to the point where we can extend Tricycle Creative potentially to have the right fit with a co-founder sounds good. I'm
yeah.
interested to hear about that process. Is that something that is now complete? Is that something that is still open? And what, for anyone out there listening that is at this by themselves and may think, hey, I this might be easier with a co-founder or something like that. What are some insights that you can give them?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe the biggest insight is just to talk about it all the time. Like, because it was a product of us just constantly. We went to pitch events, and just our ask was not for money; it was for team and for co-founder, right? And I was also in
Hmm.
this. I was looking for a technical co-founder, and like there's so many people out in the world with these ideas of, I got Uber for cats, I need a technical co-founder,
Totally.
and it's hard. and their skill set is so valuable, right? Because not everybody can do it. And so they can be really hard to find. And so you end up in these co-founder events that are like 90% people looking for co-founders. And
No one looking to be the co-founder.
yeah,
They're
we're
just
looking
looking for co-founders. Right?
exactly.
Got it.
Then you just commiserate over a beer.
Sure.
And so we were really lucky, through going through an accelerator, Div Inc., which is an accelerator for women and people of color founders in Austin, Texas, an amazing program. We were on a panel and at Trend Kite, and I just sort of, giving my usual spiel about Gardenio, and they were looking for a co-founder. That may have been like the 50th or 60th event I mentioned it at, right?
Sure.
And at that point, somebody came up to me after. Her name was Chelsea. She was like, "Hey, I'm interested in what you're working on and the way you're trying to build the team. I'd love to talk." And so that was, there were a handful of people that over time were like, "Oh yeah, I'll definitely technical co-found for you. I'll be the co-founder," and just didn't pan out. And with Chelsea, we just met maybe about once a month over about 4 or 5 months and just kind of talked about what the vision was, what we were trying to do. And one of the things I recognized in her that I didn't recognize as much in the other people I talked to is just there is she's just such a fighter. Like she is just like, I'm going to go and figure this shit out. I don't know. Can I say that on?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
You could say worse.
Okay, cool.
Actually, you need to now say worse. No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, don't you
totally
fine.
If there are children listening to this podcast, I would be blown away by those kids. They got hustle, and they might be applying to be another technical co-founder for you. So
yeah. So we met with her, and she's just like a fighter. And it was this, I started to rely a little bit more on my intuition over the past few years. And there was like a really strong feeling here that we shared value sets, and that we shared a way of working, which is just, we really hustle and put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And we were both of us question authority and expertise, like very strongly.
So that's really interesting to me because, I think maybe, and I think you would agree, there's no, this is the right way or this is the wrong way. But right. I do find it interesting. I think most people would be like, oh, in a co-founder, I need someone who is like the opposite of me,
Yeah.
And it sounds like you found someone maybe from a skill set perspective, mm-hmm. brings a lot of value. And I'll go as far as say the opposite of what you bring to the table. Yeah. But as far as work style, and I think, what's important to them and even how they work, you were similar. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And I think that speaks to the way that sometimes the general advice is, right, like you're saying, get somebody totally different from you. But I do think that there's some things that you should share. And that is like values, vision, and I do think in many ways working style or attitude towards work. But then the things that should be very different are your skill sets, your backgrounds, there are particular insights and things. And I think that it should really just be somebody that you want to spend a lot of time around, because you will spend a lot of time around them. And Chelsea was just like, she's very just like all business and get shit done. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like you're the right values fit. We work very similarly. We both know how to build products, which was an advantage for us. So I think at first I was actually concerned because I was like, oh, is she going to like challenge me enough? Because I'm quite self-assured. I know what I'm good at and what I'm not. But I'll always have an opinion on something. And I think the first time we talked, she wasn't like really challenging too much, and I couldn't have been more wrong in the long term. She calls my shit all the time, and I love it.
That's important though, man. Like I got it, even with not co-founder, but like my creative staff. I like to tell them, these are definitely they have areas certainly of expertise. I see things from a very macro perspective when it comes to how a piece of creative can be utilized and the clay, if you will, how to morph the clay for the respective campaigns and pieces and parts and timing and blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. But that does not mean at all that they don't have ownership over, and I want to grow that with them, but their area of expertise. Right. And so I tell them all the time, like, please, I don't have sole ownership over good ideas or really ideas at all. And I
Yeah.
think that's something you need not only at a co-founder level, but I think it's healthy at all levels of a company to at least encourage, the out ideas they have, the different approaches that they may have. And I'm going to tell you, 9 times out of 10 with
Mhm.
my teams, when they have come up with an idea, it is better than mine.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I cannot sit here and be like, I have always had the best ideas and no one's ever had greater ideas than me. Not the
Yeah.
case at all. Like, I just kind of attempt to be, like light the fuse a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think with the good team around you at a co-founder level, at an employee level, and I think it sounds like even from your perspective at a customer level, right? That you're getting feedback and that you're getting ideas, and that was even, we talked a little bit about this, but like I am a customer, and I became a customer because of our first conversation. We were connected by a friend and we just chatted, and I was like, I dig what this guy's talking about, which sounds like, you've had a lot of that. So I
I
signed up,
I'm
and
so sorry,
and
bro.
I've been and I've been a member. And then you reached, we had an issue, reached out to you, and then you and I, like, even kicked around some different ideas. And so I think that's just so interesting, and something I would encourage anyone out there that's listening is as much feedback and kind of like encouraging of new ideas you can get, the better off your business is going to be. So we've talked about that co-founder search, but you guys are kind of, I mentioned this, at this like early, pun intended, seed state. I don't know technically, right? If like by definition, but you guys are relative. When did you start Gardenio?
Yeah, I think it's a fuzzy question. We incorporated in January of 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
So still, still young, actually. You're about the same age, if you will, of Tricycle Creative. So,
Yeah.
but you've gone some new and interesting routes that I always love hearing about and talking to people about. And that's kind of some of the doing some of the funding, and all kinds of different kind of like activities inside of Austin. So
Mhm.
if someone's out there and they are starting a business, or heck, they've started a business a year ago, that kind of thing, and they're here in Austin, I'd be curious, do you have any sort of recommendations? I know you'd mentioned an organization prior, just a second ago, but
Yeah.
what other things would from your experience, or what tips do you have?
Yeah, and this is for sort of getting into the startup scene, starting a business, things like this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's actually a little similar to my previous piece of advice, which is to talk to as many people as you can about it. I think I made the mistake, and it's just part of the growing process. But in I think it was January of 2017. That's when I was like, okay, I'm super going to work on Gardenio. I think I have an idea of what I want this to be, but I was just doing it like in my like spare office room, like at
Mhm.
my house, and like didn't talk to anybody about it. And so I spent kind of 8 months just really just kind of messing around and not really getting anywhere, thinking I was getting somewhere. And it wasn't really until I got into Div Inc. in fall of 2017, pre-incorporation, that in the first 3 weeks there, I got more done than I did in the 3 months.
What is it? Div Inc. Can you spell that? What is it?
Yeah, that's Div Inc. DIVINC. And they actually, I think, still have applications open for companies right now that are working on social justice innovation, which is
Mm.
really interesting. Um, and so, yeah, we got into there, and it really introduced us very quickly to the mentors in town. They had a partnership with Capital Factory. That's a good place to spend time if you're in the tech space, particularly. I know they're expanding a little bit more toward being friendly toward consumer packaged goods companies. Previously, that has mostly been in the domain of an accelerator called SKU, which is a consumer packaged goods accelerator. So there's these different accelerators around town, and they're very good for folks who are getting into the scene. Not all of them are very early stage. What they do is they really introduce you to the network. give you programming so that you can learn about the different parts of these businesses, and really start to build this network of other founders. And when you have those three things, you put yourself in a really strong position to be successful, because nobody does this alone, right? And we rely on networks and communities. And I would say probably one of the best investments I've made has been just in people and networking and meeting people all the time, and like in trying to help them and operating in goodwill. And I think that any success that we've had as Gardenio so far is completely due to that, and just trying to be a good person in the world, and meet people and be a friend. So that said, getting out there to Capital Factory, to Relay Co-working, now these are much more virtual these days, and just being in the scene, being a good person, and talking about what you're doing, understanding what stage you're at. If you're sort of like, hey, I'm just at an idea stage, I have an idea for a new kind of purple rice bar, food bar or something like that.
I told you about that in confidence. How dare you? How dare you bring that up on this call? That was my retirement plan.
and then you start talking to people, and you're like, yeah, I'm not sure where to start. And then they'll be like, oh, so you'll probably need to get it produced by a co-packer. You know what a co-packer is? And they'll be like, yeah. And so then you just start asking the right questions, and even if you feel like you know a little bit, always play dumb, and then that's when you're going to get these resources, and people want to help.
And that's what I would say. That I don't think that is exclusive to Austin, but I will say, in moving here, oh geez, at this point, 6 years ago, right? It is very welcoming to new people, but particularly to entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur scene here is very welcoming. And I think that, if you're not alone in this, and I think when you are an entrepreneur and starting your own business and going through that, it can be a lonely existence. Right? It feels like you're out there on your own. And it's something that oftentimes you don't even know what you don't know. It's true. When I got started, and I had worked at corporate jobs for the better part of 15 years, there was still and then you start your own business and it's like all new. Right. And so I think there are a lot of people here that can help you navigate. And if you're not here, I have to believe that's true of many cities, many scenes, that, when you talked about this idea of kind of paying it forward, I'm putting words in your mouth here, but talking about working with other people, that's been my approach too. Like, I'm a big believer in, and I don't know what the term is. You're a philosophy major. Maybe it's karma. Maybe it's just good, like cosmic interaction, but I'm a big believer in the pay it forward thing. And I think if you can bring that to your business, I really believe you will find that to be truly beneficial to what you're doing. And I think some people don't do that because they may not even connect with people within their own industry for fear of, oh, that's my competitor. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think there's any market more saturated with marketing agencies than Austin, Texas. Okay, maybe New York, Chicago, but like, we're up there. We got a lot of freaking marketing agencies. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you, that hasn't stopped me from talking to other agencies in town. They do things different. I do things one way, the way I enjoy, the way I know I can do them well for my clients. They do things another way. Prospects may like their way better than my way. They may be looking for something there. Like, there is typically enough business for everyone to go around. And I'm going to tell you, there have been many situations where I come across a client and I'll just say, that's not really a great fit for me. Yeah. I'm going to hand it off to them. And when you do that, like that builds something. That builds, it's like dividends and goodness, right? I really believe that comes back to you. And so when we're talking about investments, we've definitely talked about this investment in people. Are there other investments that you've made? Are there any other sort of investments that you've made that it could be money or time or energy, that have really been worthwhile for this, with your work with Gardenio, or even, I guess, just in your life period?
Yeah. If it's in my life, and this actually extends to the professional, I think that you mentioned the struggle of being a founder, feeling like you're alone. There's a lot of reasons why it's a difficult experience to be a founder, and I think a lot of what can make a really good founder is a lot of self knowledge and doing a lot of emotional self work. And so, to that extent, I think therapy has been one of the greatest
Oh,
professional investments I've
hmm.
ever made. I think that over my 20s, just being very frequent at therapy really enabled me to understand how I feel about a thing. It made help me understand how to communicate that feeling, which is incredibly
Yeah.
beneficial in a relationship of any kind, professional or
Mhm.
personal. And it helped me understand how to understand how other people are feeling and how other people can think. And so as a result, I am just much better able to try and identify what somebody may be wanting or looking for. And sometimes it's just by asking them and having those really, really tough conversations. And that can be a challenging part of my personality sometimes because not everybody's used to having those really tough, challenging conversations. But I am a firm believer that that kind of healthy conflict and the ability to manage it is not only what makes a really good team long term, but I think it actually just makes individuals happier and more honest in their lives. Yeah, I think it's been really powerful for me.
When you're a founder of a business also, um, I think you wear, particularly of a small business, I think you end up wearing two hats, that of manager and that of leader.
Yeah,
And just to be very clear, those are not the same thing. I think
right.
people blur the lines between those, but they are very distinctly different things. And when you talk about therapy, how it helps you not only just, understand yourself, but I think communicate, you know, I'll say feelings, but I think also just communicate in a healthy way as a whole.
Yeah.
That's incredibly important as a leader. And I
Mhm.
will say, as a manager, I certainly have felt like I have been in the therapist's chair with an employee having to work through issues.
Yeah.
And so I think you also have that almost like a 360 value of appreciating and getting the benefits of therapy, because you are going to find yourself in that chair and yourself on the couch in
Yeah.
those roles. And I think that therapy can help you navigate both of those in a healthy and maybe even healthy, important, also productive way.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
So I want to ask you a little bit about current marketing efforts, right? Um, where have you seen or had success? What do you work is, without getting into the super secret sauce? Is there
Sure.
anything you're working on or anything that you've been struggling with Gardenio?
Yeah. I think we made a decision, especially as we launched in March, to really, get that initial burst of customers, and then really focus on retention,
Hmm.
actually. And so we
It's a
think the
great
best,
move.
yeah, I think the best kind of marketing is from your customer base
Yeah.
and is from people having a really positive experience with the product and the support. And
Well, I
we,
think it also helps you and keep me honest here, like kick the tires on the fulfillment and the process and everything too in a really healthy way.
yeah, definitely. Because, like, let's say, I mean, we got like 10,000 orders in right now, because we tried, and that would be a great problem to have. Actually, we'd figure it out.
Sure, of
But,
course.
but the scale that we're at, just being kind of before even our pre-seed funding round properly, we just wouldn't know what to do with that, and everybody would have a really awful experience. And so I think sometimes they call it like, grow slow to grow fast. And it's understanding what our initial customers want and need, what they love about the product. We have a really good understanding of that, what they don't love about the product. And like, particularly for us, we're very interested because we have an app to help people as they grow. And that's a huge part of the future of the company. And it's in a very early stage. And so understanding very specifically what they want to see from that, what their expectations were. I'm a user researcher and designer, right? And so I'm endlessly fascinated with understanding how these people feel. And I think the best way to do it is to keep the sample small. And we continue to grow every month. But looking
I see what you did there. I see what you did. Grow.
Yeah.
Double, like works both levels. I get it. Plant business. I'm with you. Hey, are there any specific things?
Yeah.
You can say no. And no one's mad about it. But I would just be curious as a customer also.
Yeah.
If there are any specific things that, have been really enlightening, or that, you've been tweaking, that kind of thing. And maybe start first. Maybe this is a good place to go in a little more depth about what being a customer of Gardenio, what it means, what happens. Maybe that's a good place to start. And then if you do have any specifics, things like that you'd want to share, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I'm happy to go into a little more detail on like the marketing strategies and stuff like that. But since we are focused on retention, I can talk about that experience. So yeah, when you're a Gardenio member, you go to our site, you sign up and you say, I want to be a member for a season. We do a seasonal membership. And so you say, okay, I want to sign up. And then you say, these are my plant preferences, right? I don't know exactly what plants I'm going to get every season, but I do know that they're going to be right for my area, and that they're going to be live organic plants. They're going to come with the right kind of soil that matches with them, because the different kind of plants need different kinds of nutrients and soil. They're going to come with the right kind of mulch, and they're going to come with a care guide. And so there's a little card that's going to help me. So the only trip I need to make is to the site, right? I don't have to sort of be labor going to a garden center, talking to people I don't know about something I don't know.
It's definitely a turnkey package. Like everything comes in the package for sure. Yeah. I can confirm that.
Right. And so, so your first season, you get 3 plant kits, which is, 3 of the plants, containers, mulch, soil, all that good stuff. And then you get an app. You get access to a premium app that helps you as you grow. And so the vision of this app is to bring in the information localized to where you are, to connect you to the right supplies for when you are identifying and addressing issues in the garden, and to connect you to people. And so your local neighbors, to help you as you grow. You can imagine connecting to somebody else in your community who's also growing mint, and you're like, hey, I have this thing. Did you have this thing, right? And the community hasn't been organized in this way really ever, despite how much activity there is in it. And so, the current state of the app is that we have these very detailed care guides that you can go in and get detailed information on, what kind of sun does this thing like? What do I do when it's too hot or too cold? And we have some interesting things down the pipeline. So the idea is you have access to this app. It supports you. You can also reach out to us for one-on-one support. It's me or a member of the team, just kind of troubleshooting your issues. People have really loved that. And so, so you get these 3 plant kits. It pops up on your door. You're like, oh, cool, this is rad. It's all here. Let me put it together. It takes like less than 10 minutes. And then you have this app, and you're sort of like, okay, cool. I feel like this is going to be useful later. I can add my plants. And over the next 3 months, you build this relationship with the plant. After you're done planting it, you're sort of like, okay, kind of what comes next? Is the plant like talking to me in some way? It looks kind of droopy when you look at the app, or it's looking kind of weird, or it's looking really good. And, right now we just do the kind of top 10 kitchen herbs. And so the experience, the Gardenio experience, we always say we're a facilitator of an experience with a plant. We're not the heroes, kind of the plant is, right? And as you start to grow, you start to see how different things can affect the plant. And you can start to, if you're growing sage, you can take some sage, you can make a little cocktail with it. You can cut it up and garnish it on a butternut squash soup, right? You'll notice that there's different varieties you didn't even know there were of sage, that, we think sage is one thing and it's so many things.
Yeah.
And so it's this cool exposure to this world, and you start to get a taste of it. And we really are this sort of entry way to where with those first 3 plants, you're like, oh, this is really interesting or cool.
A gateway drug, if you will.
Absolutely. Totally cool. Gateway drug.
Business is 100% legal. I'm just messing with everyone. So please do not misconstrue my jokes. All right. These are legit plants. Then I say plants, I'm not using air quotes. These are these are plants that are legit. And yes, they are spice the right word? No, herbs.
Yeah, these are
Herbs
herbs.
is a better, right? They're just herbs. Or
Yeah,
can plants be spices? I guess they can because they get ground. Is that a process that makes them spices?
yeah. I mean, like a
Right?
lot of in the culinary and plant world, it sort of depends on who you ask. But in general, I call them all herbs, and a lot of times the seeds will be ground up and
There you go.
considered.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but uh, but yeah, and so you get this, and over those 3 months, you start to build that relationship. You troubleshoot it. You'll show friends. You'll cook it. And I remember this one experience I had of I was growing cilantro, and I had some friends over, and I pulled cilantro from the front yard, and like we were just doing a brunch thing, and so I brought it in, and the room filled up with cilantro smell, and that
Yeah.
offended some people. But otherwise, that was just this unique experience. And so at the end of the season, if it's an auto renewal, and you're sort of like, okay, now it's month 4, so I want to get another plant, and it's going to be right for this season. So you're starting to learn also what grows when. And this interesting feature of what we have, and nobody else does this, is that if your plant dies for any reason, right, struggling, and sometimes that happens. We have a program called Infinite Lives. And so that is, if your plant dies for any reason, we will send you a new one. You just sort of reach out to us via the app, and you're like, hey, I think this is going wrong. My plant's totally dead. And we're like, hey, it's actually not dead. We can try and fix it this way. But then if it actually is dead, we just sort of put the stamp on it, and we say, here's another one. Try again. That's what it means to be a member.
That's good for those non-green. So I got the subscription. It's for my wife, and she's a green thumb. Like, she's great. She can grow things. I am terrible. But when we got the package, we unpacked it together and looked at everything, and I was like, wow, this is like accessible for her, and definitely accessible for me, plant noob, if you will, right, who doesn't know anything and is terrible at plants and whatnot. I really appreciated how, and that this is where, I take my hat off to you. Like, there is an art and a skill there that I think, for those of you out here there who are not marketers and always wonder about the value of marketing, there is an art and a skill to putting together something like that you're able to speak to two very distinctly different audiences there. And I think you guys did a really good job on that, with kind of the packaging and the explanations and everything like that comes with it. I'm very excited to see the development of the app. I'd be curious, because we also, we have talked about, how your service is kind of this also entryway into, fresh cooking, things like that. Is that an area of expansion that you're looking at for the business? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Do you mean sort of like more like fruits and vegetables and things like that?
No. Like the how the using of the herbs into like food and drinks, that kind of thing. I know you're doing it now, but obviously I'd like to, I'm going to sit here and hope and wish. And I don't like, that your business grows with the orders. As that happens, do you see yourself also wanting to grow the part of the business that's like, oh, here are recipe cards, or here are recipes and drink things and things like that? So that's something you're looking to also kind of develop.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually, those designs got finished up a couple weeks ago, and so it'll be a little bit before they hit. But that was one of the first things we worked on. A lot of people have that question, and over time, because some of the varieties within a species like a basil are much different from one another. Whereas, like, you probably wouldn't want to use holy basil in your pesto, where you might normally use something like an Italian Genovese basil. And so showing, say, hey, depending on the variety, here's are different things that you can cook with that. And so that's short term. And
I love that, because it's creating multiple connections. You talked about like the connection between the person and the plant, right? There's a connection there. But then even that person who didn't like cilantro when you brought it, but like the connection between then you and another person and the plant is almost facilitating that, if that makes sense, through the food. Like, I am a huge believer in the power of food to appreciate cultures, to bring people together. and I think that you guys being part of that, that piece also is a very natural, and I think very, it just makes a lot of sense as I say extension, but I do think is part of what you guys do.
It really is. It's how do we facilitate that whole experience front to back where you feel supported, where you feel confident, and actually just before we move on, you mentioned this idea of like balancing different kinds of customers, experienced and non-experienced. One of the things that we really have invested in our marketing is our brand voice and tone. And I mean, it is mostly it is a semi-organized version of just how I like to talk generally, and what I wanted to see out in the world. But it's like it's weird, it's quirky, it's super informal. We want it to feel approachable to anybody, so we'll misspell things. I'm constantly telling some of the writers on the team embrace the contraction when they've like never heard that in any of their work before. And I'm just like, no, we're meeting people where they are. We're talking like we talk, and there's plenty of articles out there that are like, well, the nitrogen levels need to be at this, and it's
Oh,
like,
God.
yeah, it's like, you're here to have a good time, and we're going to tell you what you need to know, and we're going to tell it to you in a way that you will enjoy hearing it, and it'll make you feel like these guys are kind of weird, and I don't know 100% how I feel about it, but I'm gonna kind of keep going with it.
You're not
And,
you're not you're not a science kid, would be
yeah,
my
yeah,
thing there. Like you're not that's not the angle there, right? Like
yeah.
again, I know I got this for my wife, but even my wife who is a green thumb, I'm not I wouldn't I wouldn't subscribe to a service because it just like overly explained the science of it to me. Now that being said, I will say
Yeah.
this.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean it's not potentially like an opportunity down the road for, what I would almost call like revolving or secondary content, right?
Mhm.
On a
Mhm.
blog on your blog, if you were to develop a blog, right?
Which we're
Maybe
doing.
science corner, and maybe there you can talk about it and then you can share that in a newsletter or on socials, and that might resonate with people. But I think as part of your core thing that you offer, I don't see that really, connecting as well as the current path, the current things that you're doing that really make this super accessible
Yeah.
to anyone, and let's say I have success and I stick with you for
Mhm.
multiple seasons. I may then decide I kind of I want to grow my garden large scale, right? I've really
Mhm.
enjoyed this has been super easy. Again, it's been like my gateway drug to gardening. I
Right.
want to do this now in my garden, right?
Right.
Well, okay, maybe I would want to read that article about the science, if you will, behind it. But I
Yeah.
think that's an evolution. That's a pivot, if you will, or a move
Yeah.
that your customers can make. But I don't think it's part of the core.
Yeah. We absolutely want to do stuff like that. In fact, one of the ways it started is because I was growing in a bed. And when you're growing in a bed, there are additional challenges of how far things are spaced and, what you put next to what. That's some all really interesting stuff. And so yeah,
Flower
expanding.
bed. When you said bed, let me just tell you what my visualization there was. It was you in a bed and you had like plants like
Mhm.
all around you, like hoarder style, but not
Yeah.
as horrifying. It was
Yeah.
just like actually kind of calming, like very, very like Mother Earth-ish. But
Yeah.
then you kept going and I said, oh, flower bed. I connected it.
No, no, you had it right the first time.
Oh,
It
I
was
did. Okay, fantastic. Okay, good to know. Your silly posturepedic was just filled with dirt and plants. Got it. Okay.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I apologize, but yeah,
Yeah.
growing in there and that was the spark, if you will, for it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It was a spark, and I think that there's plenty of stuff for people who want to deep dive.
Yeah.
And but what we're seeing really lacking is that entry level material. But we definitely want to trickle down and get that allow you sort of like if you want to dig deeper, pun very much intended, then
See what you
we'll accommodate that over time,
smart.
particularly with content. So
So I want to wrap up here in a second, but before we do, I have a real quick question. I don't actually know if you know the answer to it, but I thought I'd ask. Is there a least favorite plant and a most favorite plant? Is there a plant that people are consistently saying that that's not one that they want? Do you know that? Does that exist? Does that data exist, and are you willing to share it?
Yeah, fuck oregano. Just kidding.
Damn, no, you didn't. Oh man. My listeners are really big into oregano. This is gonna be so awkward.
You're gonna get
Damn.
you're gonna get so many letters. But no, actually there hasn't been one that has really overperformed or underperformed. Since we started in March, it was already starting to get like a little late for a cilantro and parsley, so we haven't really tried that out yet. But what's interesting is that for people who said that they wanted cilantro, there's some alternatives that we're thinking of trying out. So that it's not the strict kind of, again, there's so many varieties of things. And we work with our Gabriel Valley Farms, which is our plant provider, and we started asking them questions all the time. And they were like, well, these are kind of like cilantro summer substitutes. Cilantro is a cool weather plant. Here's some warm weather things that are kind of like cilantro. And so we're interested, and we're kind of always running tiny tests, to see what people feel about there. But otherwise, nobody's just been like, nah, don't want it.
Hated it across the board. It's like, oh, no one loves you. Just got just a whole shelf of just sad parsley or something. But that's good. Okay. Yeah. So let's end with we have worked out, if I'm not mistaken, for listeners of this podcast, a promotion. Am I correct on this? Is this something that we're doing? I can't remember if we made it official or not. So I don't want to. This is like a quasi. I'm slowly tiptoeing into a tease for a promotion. But am I correct, first and foremost?
You absolutely are, and I'm slowly tiptoeing into my discount codes to see what it is.
Whoa! Okay, you keep doing that, and we're in a second here. You're going to get the info on a promotion that Tripod and Tricycle Creative doing with Gardenio. Super excited again. I am a subscriber. I think the service is awesome. We've had great success, and it's not just because I know Roman that we actually had a plant what we thought die on us, but it didn't. And Roman, I just reached out to support, and you replied back with like these detailed, like crazy detailed instructions, and we did it. And I'm happy to report that plant is very much alive. So, you'll get tremendous support. Again, they have the Infinite Lives program, which is great. So even if you're like, oh, I don't know, I'm a little scared, they're there, they got your back on it. So I really enjoyed being a subscriber and a member and someone who helps, again, a fellow Austin entrepreneur grow their business. So have I stalled long enough? Do we have the code? I might also be able to go through my email and find it.
No, we got it for sure.
Podcast production on the fly, baby. Okay, what do we got?
So we had everybody on staff take a week-long summit to come up with this code.
Go on.
And it's for 15% off your entire order. And so we ship once a month, typically closer to the beginning of the month. If you put in, and again, this is very expensive, this code, Tripod, TRIPOD.
Look at that. The greatest marketing minds came together. So promo code Tripod, correct, at checkout?
Yeah, you just put that in the checkout, and that'll get 15% off the whole order. If you order before August 1st, we'll ship it the first week or so of August and so forth, moving on. All summer planting season stuff, so should be good.
Look at that, folks. I'm here for you, and so is Roman and Gardenio. So 15% off your entire order. And when you put in Tripod at checkout, and where can people do that?
The best place to do it is growgardenio.com.
Fantastic. And where else and how else would you like people to either connect with you or with Gardenio online?
Yeah, absolutely. They can connect with us on Instagram. We have a bunch of silly videos and stuff we post on there all the time at growgardenio. And if folks are interested in what we're doing, I'm actually pretty active. And this is one thing I didn't talk too much about. I've invested a lot of time and energy on LinkedIn, and that's produced a lot of really cool, interesting results for us. And so LinkedIn, Roman Gonzalez, founder of Gardenio.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited again to, yes, find a product or service that I enjoy, but I think even more so, I really enjoyed getting to know you and getting to know the business, and I'm really excited to see, what directions you guys go, and I'm encouraged that you will grow for sure, and I want to, continue to tell your story as that happens. So thank you for being a guest on Tripod, the Tricycle Creative podcast. Listening at home, in your car, wherever you are, you can get show notes and listen online and subscribe to this podcast. If this is one you're just listening to and you haven't subscribed, shame on you. All of that is at tripodpodcast.com. And until I talk at you next, as always, I encourage you to keep pedaling.
Thanks for listening to Tripod. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. Show notes can be found at tripodpodcast.com. Connect with Tricycle Creative on social media at Hello Tricycle, and learn more about how we can help you with your marketing at tricycle-creative.com.